The Middle East woke to a shockwave. News flashed across the globe. Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, was dead. An Israeli airstrike, precise and deadly, had targeted the Hezbollah headquarters in Beirut, Lebanon. The building, once a symbol of the group's strength, was reduced to rubble. The man who had been the face of resistance for decades, who had taunted Israel and rallied his followers, was gone. The Israeli government wasted no time in claiming responsibility. They called Nasrallah a terrorist mastermind, a threat to regional stability. They pointed to Hezbollah's arsenal of rockets, their support from Iran, their role in numerous conflicts. This strike, they argued, was an act of self-defense, a necessary measure to protect Israeli citizens. But in the streets of Beirut, and in towns and villages across Lebanon, a different narrative was taking hold. This was not self-defense, it was an assassination. It was an act of war, and it would not go unanswered. To understand the seismic impact of Nasrallah's death, one must understand Hezbollah. Born in the crucible of the Lebanese civil war, Hezbollah was more than just a militia. It was a social and political movement. Funded and armed by Iran, they positioned themselves as defenders of Lebanon's Shia Muslim population, fighting against Israeli occupation and influence. Over the years, Hezbollah grew in power and sophistication. Their guerrilla tactics proved effective against Israeli forces. They built a vast network of tunnels, bunkers, and weapons caches. And they cultivated a cult of personality around Nasrallah, a charismatic leader who spoke of resistance, of martyrdom, of victory against all odds. Hezbollah's influence extended far beyond Lebanon's borders. They trained and supported militant groups across the region. They provided social services, healthcare, and education in impoverished communities. They became a key player in the Syrian civil war, fighting alongside the Assad regime. To their supporters, they were heroes, freedom fighters. To their detractors, they were terrorists, a destabilizing force in an already volatile region. As news of Nasrallah's death spread, a collective gasp went through the Middle East. In the halls of power, from Jerusalem to Tehran to Washington, D.C., phones rang off the hook. The question on everyone's mind was the same: what happens now?
Hezbollah, never one for subtlety, gave a swift and unambiguous answer. Their flags, emblazoned with a raised fist clutching an assault rifle, flew at half-mast. Their television station played Quranic verses, a somber soundtrack to the unfolding drama. And their leadership, shrouded in grief and anger, issued a chilling promise retaliation.
The details were scant, but the message was clear. Hezbollah would avenge their fallen leader. Israel would pay a heavy price. The region, already teetering on the edge of chaos, braced itself for another round of violence. Section 4. The world holds its breath. The international community watched with a mixture of apprehension and condemnation.
The United Nations called for restraint, urging all parties to avoid further escalation.
The United States, a staunch ally of Israel, expressed concern about the potential for a wider conflict.
European leaders echoed these sentiments, pleading for calm and dialogue.
But in the Middle East, where old grudges die hard and the thirst for revenge runs deep, such calls often fell on deaf ears.
The cycle of violence, once set in motion, was difficult to stop.
Each act of aggression begat another, each death fueling a desire for retribution.
The world held its breath, hoping against hope that cooler heads would prevail.
But as the hours ticked by and the rhetoric grew more heated, the prospect of a wider conflagration loomed larger than ever. Section 5. A region on the brink. The death of Hassan Nasrallah marked a turning point in the Middle East, a moment of profound uncertainty and danger.
The region, already grappling with multiple crises, was now facing a new and potentially catastrophic conflict.
The implications were far-reaching. Would Hezbollah's vow of retaliation plunge Lebanon back into civil war?
Would Israel's response trigger a wider regional conflict, drawing in Iran and its proxies?
Would the international community be able to contain the violence, or would the situation spiral out of control?
One thing was certain: the Middle East had entered a new and perilous chapter.
The old order, fragile as it was, had been shattered.
And the future, shrouded in smoke and uncertainty, remained unwritten.